Recording.
Oh, you can't record anything, bro. Stop with that.
Recording.
Hi, Monica. Hi, Francisco. Okay, so it's 4. Should we start? Yeah? Okay, I guess people can join us. Okay. So, yeah, we're excited to teach you about economics too, Monica.
Maybe we could stop sharing the screen so that
Yeah, just for a few minutes. Thank you, Nina. Okay. So, welcome everyone. It's nice to see you all for this Women's HerStory Month economics presentation. And I'm going to let Christine introduce our speaker, but before we do that, we're just so excited to show everybody how important women are in economics. And we have several students here, and I'm really excited to see that. And we also have a psychologist here, which is even more exciting because we are trying to show you what economics thinks about women. So with that, I am going to let Christine welcome our speaker, Dr. Clare Peate, Mary Clare Peate, who is from the Federal Reserve. But Christine, please take it away.
Thank you, Dr. Bishop, for that warm welcome and introduction. We are absolutely delighted to welcome Dr. Peate. And once again, thank you to everyone for coming in. I just want to make sure we are on speaker view. I don't know if you can see me. Hold on a second.
You're good, Christine.
You're good? Okay. Because I can still see you.
That's your own setting. You can change your own setting if you want to.
Okay, no problem. Sorry about that. All right. So again, we are delighted to welcome Dr. Mary Clare Peate, Senior Economic Education Specialist at the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. Mary has a Ph.D. in economics from George Mason University, a master's in public policy from the University of Chicago, and a master's in education from Loyola Marymount University, and a Bachelor of Arts degree in economics from the University of California, San Diego. Mary works at the intersection of economics and education, a great intersection to have. And she develops economics content, including lessons, online learning modules, videos, and interactives, including economics-related projects with NPR's Planet Money. He secretly told me about this. And I tend to use some of those in my classes, and I'm pretty sure others do. Prior to joining the Federal Reserve, she was the director of curriculum at the Marginal Revolution University project at George Mason University, and has held several other education-related roles, including middle school teacher, textbook editor, and data specialist. She has several publications focused on teaching and learning economics. She serves on the board of directors of the Journal of Economics Teaching and is a member of the National Association of Economic Educators. Dr. Peate, in her talk today, will discuss the many ways majoring in and understanding economics changed her life and how it could change yours as well. She'll discuss how to apply economics to finding and excelling at an interesting job, but also about how economics applies to time, personal finances, relationships, and more. After her talk, we will open it up for a Q&A with Dr. Peate, as well as a roundtable conversation with some of our BMCC faculty here, economics faculty, who will share their experiences as women in economics. And that portion of the seminar will be moderated by our economics alum, Nina Kravitz. And Nina is our, again, currently pursuing her bachelor's degree in economics at Hunter College, and is also a supplemental instruction leader here at the BMCC. And Nina was a former vice president of the Economics, Equality and Environment Academic Club while she was a student at BMCC. Don't know if Tanuja is in the audience. Yeah, so without further ado, take it over, Dr. Peate.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. Let me share my screen. I'm going to do the obligatory, let me know if you can see my presentation. Is that right? All right. And I would love, please chat and ask questions throughout. I will try to get your questions, but if not, we can address them at the end. All right. Again, I'm so thrilled to be here, and I'm so thrilled to hear other people's stories as well, not just my own. And I would encourage you to seek out other people's stories as well. And if everybody could mute, that would be great. All right. The obligatory disclaimer. So if you've ever had a presentation from the St. Louis Fed or from any other Federal Reserve, the views that I'm about to talk about are mine and do not express the official position of anybody at the Fed. All right, so economics and me first. We'll get to economics and you very shortly, but economics and me. My story, again, I wish I could hear everybody's, but my story came from, I was raised without a lot of money. There were a lot of kids in my family, and consequently, education was extremely important to me. So again, I don't know if this is anybody else's story, but I grew up really caring about education as a way to get out of poverty and find my footing and voice, etc. And so it was extremely important. So when I went to college, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I don't know if anybody in the crowd feels similarly, if you're sort of, hey, I don't know where I'm going. I think originally I wanted to be an English major, then a history major. And, I took an economics class just to fulfill a requirement. And I ended up doing really well in the class. And because of that, I decided to stay and major. I fell in love with economics after. And this comports with so much research that we've seen in the field, which is, women need to do well and exceedingly well in a class before they feel encouraged. And many times our male counterparts do not quite feel the same way. But, my senior year, I fell in love with economics because I saw the ways that it can change the world. And so that economics and education, I was able to fuse those two together in my current job. But as you can see, what you'll see is that even, so I do a very specific thing, which is developing resources that are economics related. So I'm really in this subset of the world. But for those of you who are interested in finding out what an economist does, there are some other things they can do. And what you can see is that economics is cool because it allows you to fuse two interests. So economics and education, which I can give you some examples of, but you can also do economics and health, economics and sports, economics and inequality, economics and environment, economics and art. It's the intersection and the analysis in a subset, which allows you to sort of explore some of your other passions as well. And so again, I don't want to go through all of these, but I picked out a few really fascinating research articles related to that intersection of economics and, right, that economics and. So economics and health, there's a really interesting article, research by Janet Curry. I don't know if anybody has seen it. I don't know if I'll be able to get this. So it's about traffic congestion and infant health, evidence from E-ZPass. And what Janet Curry found was, so I don't know if you're familiar with E-ZPass, but it's basically there's all these toll roads, right? And you have to stop at the toll road, pay the toll to go through, to pass. And when they introduced Easy Pass, which it means you can just go straight through, right? You've got a little something marking it, and it automatically takes the money out of your account through this, system. They found that the congestion from having the cars sit and wait was affecting infant birth rates close by those toll booths. So when they switched over to Easy Pass, they found that infant birth rate dramatically improved in the nearby vicinity. Again, it's just a simplistic, really shocking example of a way that you can use economics to analyze real world problems to make the world better. Another example, and hopefully you can, what did I do? Here we go. Another really interesting example is one related to sports. And this was done a while back, but some researchers analyzed, analyzed referee decisions in basketball games. And what they found was that if the referee was the same race as the basketball team, as the basketball player, or actually if it was it was not the same race, I should say, they ended up calling more fouls on that person. And so here was something where a referee is supposed to be completely impartial, completely unbiased, and yet when you analyze the data, you could see it, that there was discrimination, unconscious or conscious. And so they published those results, and then the really empowering thing is that they shared those results with the referees and the league. And the really good news story is after they shared those results, they went back and looked after they shared the results for a number of years, and that bias or discrimination went away. And so by sharing that information, they were able to actually correct the problem, which is really just a cool story and really good news story. So again, there are so many fascinating research articles like this. And so if you have a topic that you just love, right? So I happen to love education. So I could, regale you about all these really amazing studies about that intersection of or using the economic toolkit to study education outcomes and improve educational outcomes for low-income students and a whole host of other types of people. But I don't want you to think it's limited to these topics, right? It's any topic. And so if you have an interest in the area, the economics toolkit can really help you shed light on it in a whole host of interesting ways. And hopefully, are you seeing my screen fine, the PowerPoint presentation? Perfect. Okay, so enough about me. Let's talk about you, economics and you, right? And so what I wanted to share with you was sort of how economics changed my life, but how it could also change yours. And these are in the everyday things. I hope I was able to demonstrate the really cool research topics you can look at, but I want to show you that you can have a whole host of different impacts by studying economics. And so the first one is I want to talk about career. Second one is personal finance. Third is relationship. All right. Okay, I would love the chat. Let's go with the chat. So the average worker in the workforce is going to change jobs how many times? 8 times, 10 times, 12 times, or more than 15 times? A, B, C, or D? Thank you. I'm seeing, okay, so I'm seeing B's, I'm seeing D's, I'm seeing C's. All right, wonderful, good, excellent. And if I can get it to go, oops, all right. So it's 12 times. Now, if anybody else is paying attention to the world of ChatGPT, this number may in fact climb, and we may have some different things going on here, all right? And I can say I'm well on my way to 12 already. So, so what I want to impress upon you, which is actually really cool, is majoring in economics and the ability to transfer. So this is something I wish I was told probably when I was 10 years old, but then retold every year and multiple times a year. Why do we learn? What's the value of learning? And one of the main values of learning is the ability to transfer. What do I mean by that? I mean, all right, so you're being told to memorize a formula of elasticity or some crazy thing. Well, 20 years from now, you're not necessarily going to recall that formula, but if you understand the concept enough, you would be able to apply it in a unique, interesting situation that is not like the narrowly defined way you learned in that situation that was originally described. And that's kind of the whole point of learning, where you get into the real world and the problems that you're going to face in your workforce are not going to be the exact same thing that you learned in a textbook or in class, right? And so you're going to find when you're in the workforce, the answer isn't in a textbook, right? You're going to have to be making decisions about how long should I search for an answer, right? How do I make choices in uncertainty? And the ability to transfer these fundamental concepts that you learn in one domain to another, it's the game. It's the game, guys. Again, I wish I learned this earlier, I promise you. And what's fascinating is, so there's this book called Range by David Epstein. I'm sorry if it's blurring. And what he talks about there is a variety of things on how we actually learn, how the brain retains information, and how you become a flexible learner as well, which is this ability to transfer. And surprisingly, economics majors actually perform much better on these types of tests, which analyze your ability to do this transfer, than most other majors. Definitely more than the social sciences. Some of the physical sciences don't do that bad. I think engineering does well, not surprisingly. But this is one of those things of, you learn not because you are memorizing every single thing, and every single thing that you learned in, your Intro 101 course is going to be useful in your job, but that ability to understand the essence of a topic so much so that you can transfer it to a new one. That's really important. And economics actually gives you that tool, that training, just naturally. All right. So we're going to keep going with economics and you career-wise. Which one of these is a real job? Again, I would love in the chat. So professional Instagrammer of coworkers' dogs, artist in residence at the San Francisco Recycling Center, full-time pencil sharpener, storyteller whose job is to put people to sleep, and professional wedding hashtag creator. All right, A, B, C, D, or E in the chat. Which one of these is a real job? Great. Ooh, I got one at C1. Somebody's in on the game. All right. And the answer is all of these are real jobs. Okay. All right. Why am I telling you this? So it's not because I think somebody here is going to go on to become this amazing full-time pencil sharpener, all right? And that, because they were told today that job exists, that they thought, you know what, I'm going for it. That is not the goal. The goal here is to say we are a highly specialized world. And if you can dream it, that job exists, okay? That job, there are so many different jobs out there. I hesitate to say this because it's on video, but I think it's the Dutch government sponsors some people, like 2 government employees, to have a YouTube channel where they actually take drugs on camera and discuss their like what you should be aware of, costs and benefits of it, the whole potential side effects, how to do this potentially okay. Again, not the United States world, but in the Netherlands, I believe. And again, once you see these types of jobs, you think, wow, every job exists, or if it doesn't, maybe it should, right? And so I just want to sort of introduce you to that wide world. Now, let's go into economics. What I tried to do is just take a swath of jobs that I could find on LinkedIn where the person had either a BA or MA or PhD in economics. So you could see the varied types of jobs you could have. Obviously, you could be a professor. And, I think people are aware of that job as a path from economics, or you could go into like finance and things like that. But that is not the end of the game, right? There's so many other jobs you could have. And so I just, again, highlight some of them. Director of Product Analytics at Nike, health economist at CBS. You can be an economist at DoorDash. I want to highlight this one, research analyst at GiveWell. So GiveWell is a nonprofit that's trying to optimize donations to nonprofits that give, where the most amount of their money goes to the actual program rather than to staff, et cetera. And so you could be a research analyst there. I have a friend who's a behavioral economist consultant at Ideas 42, which is a consultancy. So a healthcare innovation consultant at a hospital. One of my friends is that. You could be an analyst at the city of Denver. And again, I just recently discovered this woman who's an analyst at the city of Denver, and she works at trying to better improve the outcomes of foster children in placements, right? And then, I added this job because I think it's really cool, even though I happen to have it as a part-time job. So I write an internal newsletter for Planet Money, and it's a way that I train new staff on trying to find economics everywhere in stories in the news, et cetera. And I love it, but could you imagine that job exists? An internal newsletter for an organization. So again, I just wanted to give you this. This is not the exhaustive list, right? I want to always impress upon you, but I wanted to show you that there are just so many different jobs out there that you can have with this economics degree. And then, all right. And, in the interest of time, I will sort of run through these very quickly, but, I will say that, so coming from my background, we didn't have a lot of money and my parents weren't really well versed in finance or personal finance or anything like that. And so I grew up thinking managing money was really confusing and hard. And it wasn't until one day this light bulb clicked, which was, hey, I can apply the toolkit of economics to how to manage my finances. And it sort of gave me permission, empowered me to not be so stressed. Like you'll read these personal finance books or something that's like, you need to do these 50 million things, right? And you think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to be able to do all of those. And guess what you do? You do none of them. Okay. And so, once it's called the Pareto principle, which is not exactly economics, but I can path you from economics here. And so, there's this Pareto principle is basically saying most of the time, 20% of the effort gets you to the 80% of solution. So, it's that don't let perfect be enemy of the good. And so once you think okay, I don't need to do everything perfectly when I'm managing my finances, but what's one thing that has a big impact, right? And sort of thinking about it that way, rather than, beating yourself up that you're not doing enough, if that makes sense. And this one I thought was really fascinating was this, I want to highlight this fixed cost versus variable cost. So, I didn't benefit from it, because I didn't think about it until afterwards, but my friend did. So she was looking at buying a new car. And I said to her, oh, I just came across this great article, which made you think about, so there's the car when you buy that. And then there's the variable cost after, which is maintenance, how much do you pay for gas? Does it get good gas mileage, et cetera? And interestingly, there's been studies, I wish there were more, but there's been studies of showing, hey, there are some cars that even though they're pretty inexpensive, they have really notoriously bad maintenance costs, right? And so once you factor in those maintenance costs, sometimes that car becomes more expensive in total than maybe another car that has a higher upfront cost, but lower maintenance costs throughout. And so really true story. My friend bought a different car based on looking at this, this study and thinking about it in those terms. And so again, also fascinatingly, most cars actually, when they start to show that there's a huge maintenance cost, that's when they get retired, honestly. So when you see cars that are discontinued, it's usually because there's some underlying issue, but this is how they start to catch it, is by seeing what is the average maintenance cost, that they start tracking that over time. Something else that was super interesting for me was, when cryptocurrency first came on the scene, it was confusing. Like, what do you think about this? And when you think about the functions, so suddenly though, it clicks for me and says, hey, what are the functions of money, right? So we learn about this in economics, and there are 3 functions of money, and store, unit of account, store of value, medium of exchange. Again, I don't have time to go through all of those, but what you start to realize, if you analyze cryptocurrency from these things, it doesn't quite fit the definition of money. And so at least right now, it's still an investment. It's not actually money. Or, again, this is controversial, but if you start to think about it in those terms. And so there's a number of applications from economics that you can apply in your personal finance life. And again, I could regale you forever on this. So, but I know that we want to hear from other people as well. So I will go on to the last one, which is, and I'm happy to share these slides with the links if anybody's interested, but economics and human relationships. And this one was really fascinating. And again, I would encourage you to listen to this. This is, I think, a podcast on it. But look, we all have a finite amount of time. If you're spending time with one person, it means you can't spend time with somebody else, right? If you're in a relationship, now this can apply beyond like a romantic relationship, but what is, asking yourself, again, it's not callous to do this type of analysis, right? But to say, what is the next best use of my time? And is it actually better? Is there a better use of my time than the time I'm investing in this person? And again, it's just trying to analyze, like, time is probably your most valuable resource. And thinking about it in those terms is extremely important. So anyways, I think, I wanted to just conclude very quickly, economics and you. So economics can help you help others, can help you become a lifelong learner and ace that transfer, can empower you to find a job that is tailor-made for you, can help you decide how to spend your time and money, and can help you to understand your world. So with that, I'm going to end and ask for questions.
Thank you, Dr. Peate. That was wonderful. Maybe people have questions if you wanna stop sharing your screen. Thank you. Perfect. Other than roping Monica into an economics class, would the others have any questions for Dr. Peate? Yes, Monica.
Sorry.
It's okay.
I'm so excited about economics now. Thank you. But also, I think what I've seen before is that there is a fair amount of overlap between economics and psychology. So, especially like when we think about, behavioral economics,
Totally.
and certainly you all cover some of the topics that we cover. The referee finding reminds me of findings regarding, police departments and bias in police departments, right? So I'm wondering what you see and how the economists in the room see, where you see the overlap between psychology and economics and where you see clear distinctions between those two areas, at least the types of information that you've been presenting so far. Dr.
Yeah.
Peate.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm worried I'm not going to give a great answer. So I would love other people to chime in here. So I want to say that potentially the toolkit is different. So, you know, if I were to rattle off what I think is the toolkit for economics versus the toolkit, I'd love to hear what the toolkit, you know, for psychology, if you had one. So I think, you know, potentially we're thinking cost benefit, comparative advantage, you know, all these types of things. But then that intersection is exactly what you said. And then we're human, right? So you can have all of these like stark, you know, hey, this is the way you would make this analysis if you were, you know, a robot. But then adding that human element is where, you know, we intersect. But I don't know psychology's sort of toolkit, if you will. You know, is there sort of a tool, you know, like a lens? Like, is it philosophies, or is it more like mathy? I don't know. Do you know?
Yeah, no, that's a great. I think it, and we have so many different branches that it really like. At least with behavioral economics or some of the things that you talked about, I think about the social side, right?
Yeah.
And then like some aspects of human development tap into what you do, but then it's really more thinking about, okay, not, I like that you said this kind of cost benefit analysis and things like that. So whereas we might not be thinking about it in that terms, we're thinking about the context and the factors that might contribute to that and how that shapes the outcome. So no, that's helpful to hear that. Thank you.
If I can jump in,
Yeah,
Monica, you know, economists are very notorious about assumptions, right? And we have these individuals are rational, right? And they're always going to optimize, and they always have all the information, and they're always going to make the right decisions, but that's not how it plays out in the real world. And a lot of our models are based on that, which is why macroeconomics can never sort of predict a crisis, you know, or predict a crisis when there isn't going to be one. So, you know, what we do is the way behavioral economics takes the, you know, a different approach is that it relaxes those assumptions. And a lot of my colleagues actually have experiments that they run in labs. So they will create a game, you know, for instance, if you're thinking about bank runs, right? And they will see how individuals react, as opposed to, let's make an assumption about how these people will behave in this particular context. Let's instead, you know, simulate an environment where, you know, there's going to be a bank run, or I don't know, there's some shock to the environment, and how many people are going to, you know, start taking their deposits out of the bank. And then they're going to draw sort of, you know, inferences from those experiments. So it's becoming very empirical, evidence-driven. Here is an experiment we ran, and can this be replicated in other scenarios? So the toolkit is sort of changing in different fields, as opposed to, you know, when back in the day, we didn't have the resources to do things like that, you know.
Thank you all in the chat and then the and Shruti. Thank you. And Dr. Peate as well, and Mary Claire as well.
Naing, you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question. Hi, Professor Baishaw, and then I'm Dr. Peate. I'm really glad to be here. Also, Professor Baishaw, I'm one of in your class.
Yes, I know.
Yes, yeah, it's good to see you here. So my question for Dr. Peate is, you know, right now the AI is emerging, is really rapidly, and then everyone is like shocked, and then, you know, like are trying to like follow up with the, you know, trend and then everything. I want to know like, what are your personal opinion about these emergence of the artificial intelligence? And then do you see, you know, as a person who has the professional career in the Federal Reserve in the economy, you know, do you see any AI application in the government or economic settings? And then what do you think about it? I'd like to know your personal opinion. Yeah. That's my question. Thank you.
Yeah, not sure. So this is a big, huge question. If I knew the answer to these things, you know, I would be very happy. So again, we're in a very uncertain environment, and, you know, a lot of times, so the thing that I grapple with very simplistically is just, we've had technologies in the past that have been anticipated to change everything, and change life as we know it, and we adjust, and the end result is that more jobs are created from these technologies in the past. I don't know, how this new AI and new technology is going to behave. Is it the same as in the past, or is this somehow different than it has been in previous times? And so, it's not a field of my expertise, and so I'm a little bit hesitant to go there. But yes, there will be, tons of applications from what I can tell. I would love it if anybody else wants to chime in here.
All right, thank you, Dr. Peate. I appreciate it.
I think Dr. Peate is right. We've seen technology always makes a difference, right? What you're studying in economics now, your technology is a factor in the production process. So we know that technology will have an impact. What kind of an impact it's going to have is something, well, this is an evolving field, so we don't know what. Will jobs get affected? Most definitely they will get affected. But we also know that when some kind of jobs get affected, another kind of jobs get created. So am I worried that somebody's going to come start teaching your classes, from AI? Maybe. Will they be able to teach it as well as I do? Oh, no way. Right? So there's, yes, there will be jobs that will get affected, but there will be new jobs created. That's how an economy grows. So I think we're going to have the very same thing, the PPF is going to shift outwards, yes. And how will it shift, and whether it will be a parallel shift or whether it will be a shift more towards labor or capital depends on how the thing plays out, right? Okay.
I'd like to just add to that sort of there's been a shift in how economists have been trying to understand how technology impacts jobs. So previously we thought it was just skill, the more education you got, the higher your likelihood of getting employed. But now the kind of technology we have is that, you could be an accountant and your job is at a higher risk of being replaced than opposed to, a janitor whose tasks are harder to automate, right? So if you write some kind of very standard code, then that can very easily get automated. So economists have started thinking about tasks as opposed to skill, these high skills or education even to that extent. So these kinds of new technologies will be replacing certain kinds of tasks within our jobs, right? Whether they will be making certain jobs disappear or not depends on how routinized a particular job is. So if it's very routinized, and if someone can write a code and then other people can replicate it, then you're likely going to be out of a job. But then if there's something else that you can do with it, right? And that's what we have to think about even in terms of our education, is that what are we learning? Are we learning something that is pretty standard and routinized, or is there something that we can do with that, and how much can we apply to those particular tasks? And so that is something you sort of have to keep in mind, I guess, going forward, especially if you want to examine the impacts of such technologies.
If I can jump in there, just to add to what we've been talking about, and in terms of artificial intelligence, I think what we're forgetting about is nature, right? The environment, and what we can learn from nature. So when we don't have answers to those questions, we need to go to nature, because nature is the genius and the intelligence more than, and we are trying to understand through artificial intelligence to learn from nature, and because we as humans have not learned everything. And so there's a lot of information right now that's going around with artificial intelligence, and as we've been discussing right here. But I think there's a bigger world out there for us to understand, which is understanding nature and the impact we as humans are having on nature, and the way nature takes care of all of its species, make sure they flourish. And here, even though we have technology can do a lot of good. So how can we turn that for good, to help society flourish rather than, benefit just a few. So that's something you may want to consider. The field of biomimicry, which is, again, use of economics. How do we use economics? Opportunity cost, as Dr. Peate talked about, in terms of the economic perspective. What are the externalities that we are generating? What are the kinds of exploitation we're creating? And that's another area that you might think about, where economics is applied. So it's not just producing more stuff and consuming more stuff, but thinking about how we can make everybody thrive and flourish, because we really are living in a world of abundance, but economics calls it, scarcity. There's scarce resources that are allocated among competing ends to produce goods and services for present and future consumption. And that creates this economic activity that perpetuates the problem. And surprisingly, women are the ones who are most affected by everything that happens, including right now, the climate crisis. It's more of a climate emergency, where floods and droughts and violence of all kinds. And I think the story that Dr. Peate brought up at the start with the Easy Pass and the impact it had on changing the lives of women is something we really need to consider very, very seriously, because, and here's where economics gives us a different kind of thinking that we at BMCC provide that opportunity, because we have a tremendous group of faculty that are looking at economic issues and the economic theory from a pluralistic perspective, a heterodox perspective, and helps open your mind to think differently. So we do research, we help our students with all kinds of different opportunities, including take you on field trips, because we like to take you out of the classroom and bring the classroom, take you out of the classroom into the real world and bring the real world into the classroom. And that is what economics is all about. Any more questions as we move along? Maybe Nina has some questions.
Thank you. The moderator, yes.
Yes.
Well, I wanted everybody to speak before. So I actually have a question to Dr. Peate. I did see some of your interactive lessons, which you made with the Marginal Revolution University. I actually seen them before, I discovered about this seminar. So I actually found them really fascinating. They're really easy to manage. For now, I saw the videos about the GDP, the demand supply, and about international trade. I was just wondering, are you planning to do more lessons? What are going to be the topics, the concepts that you're going to talk about in the future? Or is it going to be the same way, or is it going to be different?
Well, so in my current job at the St. Louis Fed, so I'm no longer at MRU, right? So the one thing I would say is what I'm trying to encourage in the new job is looking at ways that we can use how we learn, so the science of learning, and apply it to lesson planning or interactives or whatever. So, something I really liked from the interactives that I created at MRU is that it would give feedback sort of responsive to how you answered it, right? So if you got the wrong answer, it would sort of give you feedback that was real time, which is really important for helping you learn and retain the information. But also, even if you got the right answer, we would still give you that full explanation of why it's right. And the reason why is that the research is clear that you should always provide that elaborative feedback. Because again, sometimes students are guessing and they don't know the right answer, right? So they're guessing between A and B, and they got the right answer, but they're not totally sure why. So providing them that fuller explanation is helpful for them. Sometimes they know partially why that answer is correct, but not that full explanation. So by providing it to them is also helpful. And so trying to use the science of learning techniques. So, elaborative feedback is one. Now I'm blanking on things. So analogizing. So, when I talked about transfer, the importance of being able to transfer giving students how is GDP like a supermarket? How is it not? Those types of things, getting people to strip down a concept to its essence and then connect it with some other concept in similarities and differences helps you become that flexible learner. And then there are a few other ones. So spaced repetition. Again, so we're trying to build this into the platform that the St. Louis Fed has now. But spaced repetition is basically you learn a concept and then you revisit it 2 or 3 days later. And so by doing that, you are further cementing the memory and the helping yourself to retain it better, because you're testing yourself like 2 to 3 days later, rather than, oh, I know this, I'm great. And then you 6 months later, you're trying to recall it. By doing spaced repetition, it's usually around 2 or 3 days. That's helpful. And then finally, metacognition, trying to get students to know, like figure out what they know, think about their own thinking and sort of take ownership, or sort of, they're driving how to, learn basically. So those are the types of things that we are trying to do and encourage.
Thank you. And another one, I actually think this is going to be interesting for a lot of students more than faculty. Or maybe the faculty, who knows. What advice do you have for BMCC students who are majoring in economics, who are interested in potential careers specifically at the Fed?
Yeah, so that's wonderful. So I'd be happy to send you, so you can be a research assistant at any of the Feds, but the Federal Reserve has a ton of other jobs, which is interesting. And so research assistant is that traditional path where you get to test out, hey, what is it like to be an economist at the Fed? So you'll be supporting an economist in their research and everything like that, which is cool. I'm on econ ed side, so you can work in economic education, which is promoting economic literacy at the K-12 level and college level. And then there's a bunch of other jobs in banking and supervision, and you could also be an economics editor, which I think would be a cool job. So there's just a bunch of different things, and I'm happy to send you, the link where you can look at all the different options.
Thank you. Oh, there's something just in the chat, sorry. Okay, yep, thank you very much. Any other questions from our guests, or we can start hearing?
Professor Attar has a
I have a
their hand up.
question. Dr. Peate, I know you're not allowed to speak officially on behalf of the Fed.
Yeah.
I'm curious about some of the stuff that the Fed is doing recently, since the Fed has been in the news and everything. I'm curious if you have any insight, and this might be too technical and off track, so in which case
a little
we
bit
can
more
ignore
than
the
what
question.
Yeah.
Why is the Fed choosing to raise interest rates to fight inflation instead of dealing with the money supply, for example?
Yeah, so I am not going to comment on this, just because it's just totally not in my wheelhouse, and has, but I think you can read statements by the presidents and the Board of Governors, if that's okay.
Sure, of course.
Thank you.
I'm just double checking if there's someone else.
Any more questions?
I don't think so. We have 10 minutes left, but I would like some of our professors at BMCC to actually speak about their
Yes, I think
stories.
that would be great.
Economics. Dr. Bishop, would you like to start, since you're the chairperson?
Yeah, I knew that was coming. So I grew up in India. I went to school in India. I did my college in India. I did my master's in India. I was when I was going to college, when I was graduated from high school and I was going to college, I was told by my mother, well, my mother said, you can be a doctor or you can be an engineer. And I said, neither. And she said, okay, fine, then I'll let you be an economist. And that was it. And so that was it. I had no choice. Economics, the way it's taught in India, is very, very different from the way it is taught here. When I came to graduate school here, and I went to Northwestern, and Northwestern is a very neoclassical school, and I met my colleagues, and I was astounded at how little they had been exposed to. They had no knowledge of development economics. They had no knowledge of feminist economics. They had no knowledge of Marxist economics. They hadn't done any of this thing in their undergrad, and it was really I felt sad for them. But so my research was neoclassical, but it was it was primarily a regulation issue, and it was steeped in econometrics, which is the language that economists talk. And then after that, I remember that I went to, in my last year of grad school, I was teaching at UC Santa Cruz, and where Professor Sharma went to got her PhD from. And I was given a class to teach on well, it wasn't called feminist economics, it was called women in the economy. Okay, and that was literally my first exposure. I'm not going to date myself, so I'm not going to tell you what year it was, but that was my first exposure outside of Northwestern to the fact that there exists all this other stuff that people are doing in this country, even though it's not being done in at Northwestern. And that was the year, for the economists here who will know what I'm talking about, that's the year that Beyond Economic Man came out. That was the first edition of Beyond Economic Man, and the year that CSWEP was established, and all of that. So I remember teaching that and teaching from Beyond Economic Man, and then just absolutely finding for the first time that I could finally identify with this is the economics that speaks to me. This is I was tired of the heteronormative rational economic man, which made no sense to me. And finally reading this and getting into this is when I began to think that, okay, I could probably live with this discipline, which I wasn't sure about before. And so that was good, and that shaped everything. I mean, my work now is all interdisciplinary. I don't do any neoclassical work anymore. If anybody wants to know, the latest research project that I'm working on has to do actually with witches. It is, I remember reading about, they just came out of, I was just doing some reading and find that, well, all these women were actually major contributors to the economies of medieval Europe and even here. They were healers, they were nurses, they were midwives, and then suddenly they were gone. How did their economies change as a result of that? So that's my economic history project that I'm working on with a colleague who's the chair of economics department at CSI. And we are, it's a huge undertaking because there's no data that exists from that time. But we're planning to see what we're going to be doing and how we're going to get around this lack of data problem. But it's terribly exciting. I'm going to step off my soapbox because I could talk for hours on this topic because I find it so exciting. But it's wonderful because we can step out of this heteronormative economics that we've all been spoon-fed, and we can start talking about things that actually matter. So, and let me also say one thing. When I joined this department, I was the first woman economist hired in this department. At Northwestern, there was one woman economist Rebecca Blank, who I think most of you have probably heard of. She was the only tenured woman economist at Northwestern. And when I joined here, I was the only one. And I was like, well, this I have control over. I am not going to see that replicated here. So now we have 3 other women economists, and I finally feel that, okay, we can match our male colleagues in terms of our strength. So I'm thrilled to have Professor Farias, Professor Sharma, Professor Attar now as colleagues. Okay, so box off. Time for others.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think Professor Attar, you wanted to share something since you're the youngest one. I haven't met you in person. This is the only professor I didn't take class with from out of here because I graduated a little bit earlier.
Sure, yeah, I can say some stuff. I'll keep it brief because we have 3 minutes left. I guess I'll kind of mention some work that you, or some types of research you could do if you decided to study to major whatever in economics. There is a school of thought, like Dr. Bishop mentioned. There is a school of thought in economics basically called feminist economics. It found its footing in the discipline in like the late 1980s, early 1990s. It basically deals with like how capitalist economic activity is gendered. So what types of jobs women tend to do, the types of work that women do that, you know, isn't paid or officially recognized in economic statistics. It tends to be more interdisciplinary, so it kind of is concerned with like the justice and the moral implications. Research that I particularly did for my master's thesis was in the field of feminist economics. I pretty much examined the relationship between poverty and women's decision-making power within the household. So their ability to like have a say on decisions related to like resource allocation, what the household purchases, whether or not the woman has a right to control what clothing she wears, whether or not she can leave the house, you know, of her own accord, or if she needs to have a male relative's permission. This was all research with a data set in Egypt, so the culture is a little different. And also another relevant fact about Egypt is that only 20% of women participate in the labor force in Egypt. So that means that for 8 out of every 10 women in Egypt, it's the family and the household that provides for women's needs and meets their material securities and not the market. So especially for poor and developing countries, we need to understand what are the dynamics that go on within the household, not just the capitalist market, that affect women's well-being. And so what my research basically found is that women who are poorer have less decision-making power within the household overall in terms of resource allocation, decision-making power, decisions affecting her children, decisions affecting her own, you know, choices. And the basic reason why is because poor women typically have little alternatives to marriage as a source of obtaining resources, right? It's not easy for them to say, okay, if you're abusing me, I have, you know, the financial wherewithal to leave this relationship and go be on my own or go find somebody who's going to treat me better. Especially because, you know, in many cultures, women's participation in the labor force is really looked down on, or there's a culture where men should be given jobs before women. So, you know, that's like kind of like one strain of research that you could do is like looking at what happens within the household, looking at women's participation in the market, all sorts of things related to like gender inequality and like the moral implications of, you know, how our economic system works. So that's my research.
Thank you very, very much. Actually, that was really interesting. Professor Farias, do you want to share anything because you're the faculty advisor for the EEEClub?
I'd love to, however, I want to be cognizant of everybody's time, so I will try to go as quickly as I can. Again, my research is kind of varied. I came to economics via accounting, you know, did accounting and realized I didn't want to do somebody else's accounts. And economics gives you that opportunity to ask questions, and sometimes you don't have the answer. So my areas are more ecological economics, poverty alleviation, education, deforestation, and I find myself looking at trees all of the time and questioning, if all of those leaves were dollars, what would we do with it, right? But the leaves come back every season. But more than that, we also have a club here at BMCC, and so my area is also sustainability and labor economics. So our club is the Economics, Equality, and Environment Academic Club that helps bridge this gap between the classroom and the real world. So you come to the club and it take you on different opportunities to learn about classrooms outside the real four-wall classroom, because that's really where our classrooms are. No more in the classroom with a desk and a chair and a board and the professor standing between, having the desk between you and the board. So there's a barrier to entry. So if you enjoy that kind of learning, we have speakers coming in, we have all kinds of other field trips we go on, and we focus around the UN Sustainable Development Goals, because that gives us 17 different goals that cover all kinds of issues, and we see the interconnectedness and interdependence of various disciplines. And I know many of you in this room are not all economics majors, but hopefully you will think about switching your major, because that's a great opportunity at BMCC. And like Dr. Peate said, you don't have to become an economist. There's so many jobs. And I'll kind of stop there because I know we're out of time, but I hope you've gained something from this conversation, and I'll let Nina take it from here. Maybe Tenzin, who's our club president, who's in the room, he could post a link to the club, and Sarah, who's our club secretary, post a link to the club. However, I got to say, Tanuja, who's our vice president, unfortunately met with an accident on the way here, and hopefully she's okay. But again, you see an economic problem, right? Somebody makes a mistake and somebody else gets in trouble. And so there's an opportunity cost to every choice we make. So with that, I'll let Nina take over and kind of close us out.
Yep. Thank you very much, Professor Farias. Just a quick question. Professor Sharma, would you like to say some couple of words? I don't want to leave you out of this.
That's fine. I think I contributed enough to the discussion. And, you want to see my research, it's, you can, I mainly use data, to understand developing country problems. There's a lot of theories out there which do not actually have any empirical evidence. And a lot of policies are actually formulated based on those theories, and they're actually detrimental to a lot of developing economies. So I show that using data, and that's my work. So, I think a lot of the students probably have heard from me before. So it was a fantastic session, and I'm going to let you close out, Nina. Thank you.
Before you close out, Nina, I just want to acknowledge one more of our women economists here, Dr. Birch, who's in the audience. So Dr. Birch, if you want to give a quick shout out for what you do, maybe.
You're muted, Bettina.
Yes. Back in 1975, I started teaching economics, and I wrote one of the first textbooks on women in the economy because we didn't have one then. And these were back in the old days, the bad old days, when if you specialized in women, you didn't get tenure. And this was especially true where I was at Columbia. So things have changed a great deal, and that's a really good thing. So I'm glad to be still teaching in 2023.
Thank you very much. Actually, it's an honor to have you here as well, and all of you. So, well, first of all, I would like to thank Dr. Peate for being here and sharing your story. It was really interesting to discover how economics changed your life and to discuss how it changed our lives as well. It was actually an honor to have you at BMCC and to have it in such a Zoom talk. We hope you'll come to us again. We would also like to thank the BMCC economics faculty, Professor Bishop, Professor Farias, Professor Sharma, Professor Attar, everybody who attended. Out of the faculty, thank you very much. It was very interesting to see how economics became such a big part of your life. and that the history of women in economics is actually happening here at BMCC, not so far from all of us, where we all actually met. We want to specifically thank the Department of Social Sciences, Human Services, and Criminal Justice, the Economics Programs faculty, and the Economics, Equality, and Environment Club for sponsoring this event. We would like to invite you to join the EEEClub. You can always find information on the BMCC website, or you can email them on their email. I think it's BMCC or eebmcc@gmail.com. Again, you can find it on the BMCC website. I would like to thank you everyone for even staying 7 minutes extra. And our event for today, unfortunately, is concluded. Hopefully we'll see you next time. Have a wonderful day and see you all soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nina.
Yeah,
Thank you,
all.
Mary.
No,
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Mary.
Thank you for coming. It's wonderful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
I learned so much. I wish we would have heard more of your stories. I wish I would have ended earlier, so I'm sorry.
No,
They were great.
No, it was lovely.
And we wanted to hear more of your examples, actually. We'll probably have to
Yeah.
have you over again because I think we stopped short now.
Absolutely.
We're gonna learn a lot from that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I know.
No, it was wonderful. So I really loved it, but I loved learning from everybody. So thank you.
Thank you. So much.
Sure.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank
Nina,
you, Nina, for doing such a fantastic job.
Yeah.
thank you,
Oh,
Nina.
thank you.
We're also proud of you.
Oh, it's a
Doing so
pleasure.
well. Yeah.
Hi, Professor Sharma. How are you doing? Because that's the only person I didn't say hi to.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I think I joined just at 4 p.m. So we didn't get that
Where
opportunity.
I thought Rochelle was coming.
So she actually had suddenly a